The day I had the car accident, Ronald was celebrating his first love's birthday. "What are you causing a scene about now? Can't it wait until tomorrow?" I calmly broke up with him. Ronald and his first love laughed. "Aren't you done playing these games yet?" They thought I was just putting on an act. Until news of my engagement to my new boyfriend spread. Ronald panicked and hurried to apologize to me. I pried his fingers apart one by one and said in disgust, "Get lost, rotten cucumber." Deciding to break up with Ronald happened on a rainy night. We were on a business trip in the countryside. Gina called, and Ronald dropped everything to rush to her birthday party. I signed the contract with a stern face all alone and then headed home. On the way, to avoid a landslide, I crashed into a tree. After calling the police, I instinctively dialed Ronald's number. When the call connected, my hands were still shaking. Thick blood flowed down my cheek. My head was spinning, and when I spoke, I could barely hold back tears. "Ronald." Before I could finish, he interrupted impatiently. "Melissa, what now? Gina's birthday is special, can't you wait until tomorrow?" What was I causing a scene about? My malfunctioning brain replayed his words, and I finally understood. Oh, Ronald thought I was jealous of Gina. I tightened my grip on the phone and tried to sound calm. "Ronald, there's a landslide on the mountain, I had a car accident." His voice finally showed some concern. "What did you say?" I repeated myself and waited quietly for his response. But after a long pause, all I heard was faint breathing and background noise. Eventually, he laughed. "Melissa, what's this new trick? You should call the police for a car accident, I can't help you." My thoughts spun, wanting to blame and yell at him, but all I managed was, "Fine, let's break up." We had fought too many times over Gina. Suddenly, I felt it was pointless and didn't want to argue anymore. This time, the other end fell silent, even the background noise stopped for a moment. Ronald coolly said, "Do as you wish." Then he hung up, leaving me in silence. I heard Gina and Ronald's friends laughing lightly. "Ronald, arguing with that girl again? Same old routine with breakups, hasn't Melissa had enough? Even as a girl, I can't stand jealous and petty girls like Melissa. You guys better watch out. If you end up with a girlfriend like Ronald did, don't say I didn't warn you. I think breaking up is for the best." Suddenly Ronald spoke up, "Enough. It's just a little fight, who said we're breaking up?" The mood lightened again on that side. I quietly hung up, forcing a self-deprecating smile. It was always like this. Ronald loved letting his friends mock me, then left me with vague words to ponder. But what could I do, Ronald? This time, I truly wanted to give you up. My acquaintance with Ronald was actually an accident. At that time, he was a wealthy second-generation student who ruled the school, while I was an orphan struggling to get by on student loans. He was looking for Gina in the library when I rushed back to school after working 3 jobs to study. In the elevator, I nearly collapsed from low blood sugar, leaning against the corner until my heartbeat calmed down. A piece of chocolate suddenly appeared at my lips. Unwrapped, sweet with cocoa butter. "You girls need to take care of yourselves." I opened my eyes. Ronald was holding things in one hand, a casual smile on his face. His innate confidence dazzled me, leaving me speechless. Seeing I didn't move, he straightened up and leaned closer, waving his hand in front of me. "Hey, you okay?" I came to and took the candy, whispering a thank you. Ronald frowned at me for a moment. Then he pulled out a handful of chocolates from his pocket and stuffed them into my hand. "Make sure to carry some sugar with you from now on." Then the elevator door opened, and he left with the desserts he bought for Gina. We met again at a debate team gathering. He was a special case for joining, and I was about to quit my favorite club due to financial pressure. He sat next to me with a smile. What a coincidence, we meet again. The rest of the story is old-fashioned and cliché. We gradually got familiar and chatted casually. The day I finally gathered the courage to confess my feelings. He came to me with a bracelet engraved with his and Gina's initials, hopeful. "Melissa, would this make a good confession gift? I think girls would like it." Snap. The courage I had mustered burst like a deflated balloon, comically disappearing. That's when I realized Ronald had liked Gina for a long time. I swallowed the bitterness and forced a smile. It's a great gift, she'll love it. I packed my feelings for Ronald away and interacted with him like an ordinary friend. However, Ronald's confession didn't go smoothly. He filled an entire playground with flowers and proposed to Gina dramatically. She rejected him right in front of everyone. Laughing, she said, "Ronald, let's not joke like that among friends." Later, Gina changed boyfriends repeatedly, while Ronald stayed by her side as a good friend. Just as I enjoyed playing Ronald's confidant. Until Gina planned to study abroad. Ronald didn't see her off, but asked me out for drinks. For the first time, his eyes were red as he murmured, "Melissa, why can't she even look back at me, even just to give me a chance?" I couldn't answer him. If I knew the answer, I could answer myself. Why couldn't Ronald look back at me, even just to give me a chance? I could only comfort him and myself, saying, "It'll pass." Maybe heaven heard my prayers. When heavy snow blanketed the campus, Ronald handed me a jar full of chocolates at the dormitory. He was cold, rubbing his hands together, but his eyes sparkled like they held a light that could illuminate my entire life. He said, "Melissa, I've fallen for you." Later, we dated, graduated, and walked hand in hand through year after year. Just when we were about to get married, Gina returned. I felt like a pathetic clown who had stolen someone else's happiness, suddenly revealed. Ronald gradually became distracted, staying out late. Time and again, he abandoned me for Gina. I began to argue with him, frantically questioning whether he still had feelings for her. At first, Ronald would explain, but eventually, he fell silent. I lost track of when he started to look impatient. "Melissa, weren't you the one who helped me come up with ideas to pursue Gina? You were generous when you had a crush on me, why has it changed?" It turned out that those emotions I thought I hid well were so clumsy and ridiculous in front of him. In the end, Ronald stormed out, running back to Gina. When I woke up in the hospital, my head throbbed. The doctor said I had a mild concussion and needed to stay for observation. My phone was flooded with Ronald's messages and missed calls. "Melissa, why didn't you come home?" "I'm sorry about last night, I got drunk and was confused. Next week, I'll take you to see wedding dresses, don't be mad, okay?" I read through them expressionlessly, my gaze stopping on a message from an unfamiliar number. It contained a photo. A man lay half-naked on a bed, one arm draped over a woman's long hair, with suggestive red marks on his waist. In the center of the image, Ronald's brown birthmark was clearly visible. I stared for a while and suddenly felt my stomach churn, doubling over at the sink, wishing I could vomit my bile. After a moment, I looked up at the mirror. The woman in the mirror looked haggard and exhausted. I forced a smile, and tears started to flow. "So disgusting, Melissa. How did you become this way?" I blocked that unknown number and replied to Ronald. "Let's break up. I'll pick up my things in a few days and quit my job, you can find someone else quickly." I pulled out the SIM card and turned off my phone, completely severing ties with the past. I never expected that car accident would bring me so much trouble. That night, after I crashed into a tree, a car behind me couldn't avoid the collision and rear-ended me. The driver was impaled in the leg by a protruding branch, and his life hung in the balance. The situation was dire. With my last bit of strength, I lied, claiming to be his girlfriend so the doctors would treat him first. Right after, I passed out. When I woke up, it wasn't long before I saw the driver, Tyrone, sitting in a wheelchair, tilting his head as he looked at me. He smiled foolishly, like some kind of lazy big dog. "I have amnesia. The doctor said you're my girlfriend. Honestly, you fit my type perfectly." I suspected he wasn't just suffering from amnesia, his brain might be broken too. After all, in my current state, I wasn't anywhere near beautiful. I patiently explained the entire situation to him and even dragged him through a full brain examination. Aside from the memory loss caused by the concussion, he was perfectly fine. Tyrone frowned, looking pitiful. "You're doubting our relationship." Then, as if he truly believed I was his girlfriend, he insisted on staying in a shared room with me, fussing over various fruits every day. I had no way to deal with him. After all, part of his condition was my responsibility. Thankfully, the doctor said his memory would return soon. So, when Ronald and Gina, along with a group of their friends, came to visit me with gifts, what they saw was Tyrone, smiling and leaning by my bedside, slicing fruit for me. Gina clung to Ronald's arm, gasping, "Oh my God. Who is this guy?" Ronald said nothing, staring at my and Tyrone's hands, which were resting close together, his expression dark and uncertain. Tyrone frowned at them, wheeled himself in front of me, and asked, "Do you need something?" Ronald looked at me, his words clipped. "Melissa, explain." Behind him, everyone, including Gina, looked at me with eyes full of accusation. I glanced at all their faces, ones that now disgusted me. On impulse, I grabbed Tyrone's hand, intertwining our fingers. "As you can see, he's my new boyfriend." The atmosphere froze. No one expected me, who had been entangled with Ronald for years, to casually find someone else. Tyrone, however, let out a proud hum, straightened his chest, and looked down on everyone. Ronald suddenly broke free of Gina's grip, his eyes sweeping over Tyrone before returning to me. "What does this mean?" Just as I was about to respond, Tyrone couldn't hold back. "Listen, mister, are you hard of hearing or just slow?" I said I'm her boyfriend. What else could it mean? I said nothing, silently acknowledging it. Ronald stared at me, his gaze heavy. I was a little stunned. It had been a long time since I'd seen that look on Ronald's face. There was unwillingness, anger, and a flicker of panic. The last time I saw him look like this was after he confessed his feelings and found out Gina was dating an athlete from another school. So he could show that kind of expression because of me too. I felt like laughing, but at the same time I wanted to cry. Before I knew it, tears had already spilled from my eyes. I don't remember how it all ended. I just recall Ronald smashing the gifts in anger, and Tyrone angrily wheeling them out of the room. Outside the hospital, Ronald and his group weren't willing to leave just yet, whispering among themselves. Their voices were neither too loud nor too soft, perfectly audible. "What's up with Melissa this time? Ronald, I really think you two are going to break up. Wanna bet? If I lose, I'll treat you." Inside the room, Tyrone wiped away my tears with a deep sigh. A long while later, I finally calmed down. When I looked up, I saw Tyrone's face, hesitant as if he wanted to say something, but was afraid to offend me. His expression amused me, and I couldn't help but smile. "Just ask what you want. You've already seen me at my worst, so what's a little more?" Tyrone thought for a moment, then confidently stated, "Your ex wasn't a good guy." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh? Why do you say that?" Tyrone started counting on his fingers, pretending to be very serious. "From his eyes, you can tell he's naturally flirtatious and easily swayed by outside temptations, unreliable. Plus, his lips are thin, meaning he's full of sweet lies. And look at those heavy bags under his eyes, clearly, he's up all night, neglecting his health." I raised an eyebrow, surprised at how accurate his observations were. Noticing my reaction, Tyrone's lips curled into a smile, and he began to enthusiastically share his knowledge of face reading. Half an hour later, he leaned back, satisfied, and asked, "So, do you know what kind of boyfriend you should be looking for now?" I followed his lead and summarized, "He should have well-balanced features, round eyes, a high nose bridge, be optimistic, cheerful, and sunny." I abruptly stopped. That description sounded suspiciously like Tyrone? Tyrone snapped his fingers. "Exactly. The perfect boyfriend is me." He grinned at me with those slightly droopy puppy eyes, then leaned in, his warm breath brushing against my face. "So, beautiful lady, will you consider me?" I pushed Tyrone away, silently rejecting him. He wasn't angry, still smiling. Just as I was about to speak, he placed a finger on my lips. "Don't give me any excuses about how you were just lying in the heat of the moment. I come from a very strict family. You said you were my girlfriend, so now you have to take responsibility." I opened my mouth, then asked, "Are you saying you've regained your memory?" Tyrone froze and turned his head away without saying a word. Suppressing a smile, I felt a lot better. After that day, Ronald never came to see me again, which suited me just fine. I enjoyed my peaceful stay at the hospital, using it as a vacation. However, his friends kept messaging me with long explanations. "Melissa, Ronald didn't mean it that day. He was just drunk," and his friend said a few things. "He still cares about you." When he heard the news about the mudslide, he went crazy with worry. He went that day to apologize on our behalf. But who knew? Sigh. Melissa, Ronald doesn't know how to express himself. Please forgive him. Their long, annoying messages piled up. I didn't even bother to read them, just blocked them all. On the day I was discharged, Tyrone looked at me pitifully. Melissa, will you come back to see me? I chuckled. I wouldn't be able to avoid it even if I wanted to. What if you accuse me of hit and run? Tyrone smiled too. Then I'll order a nice dinner tonight and wait for you. I nodded in agreement, then turned and went back to my apartment. To avoid running into Ronald, I deliberately chose a weekday. The apartment was empty, just filled with my things. Ronald hadn't stayed here since he stormed out. There wasn't much to pack, just some clothes and documents, not even enough to fill a suitcase. When Ronald unlocked the door, what he saw was me, dragging my suitcase, ready to leave. His hand tightened on the doorknob, then relaxed. His normally attractive lips thinned into a hard line before he finally spoke in defeat. Melissa, can we talk? Honestly, I wanted to slap him. I wanted to be like the heroines in novels, haughtily tilting my chin and coldly saying, there's nothing to talk about. Then I'd leave in style, cutting ties completely with the past. But when I looked at Ronald, this man who had been by my side for 5 years, I agreed. I thought, if we part ways, we should do it on good terms. I owe it to the person I used to be. As I sat down on the sofa with Ronald, I felt a bit dazed. The last time we sat down and had a calm conversation seemed like a lifetime ago. During the years when Gina was abroad, Ronald and I had some good times together. We were like any ordinary couple, going on dates, watching movies, kissing, and dreaming about the future under the stars. He once said, "We'll always be together." Because of my background, Ronald's parents didn't like me much at first. But Ronald was persistent, saying he loved me. My marriage isn't about a trade-off or family benefits. As long as we love each other, that's enough. Later, his mom and I had a conversation, and she even said, it's rare to see Ronald so serious. Melissa, you two need to live well. From now on, consider me half a mother to you. If he ever dares to bully you, just let me know, and I'll deal with him. I was an orphan, and all I ever wanted was to have a family of my own. I thought I had finally achieved that dream. In the end, it turned out to be nothing but an illusion. A warm sensation on my hand brought me back to reality. Ronald was holding my hand. In that moment, an image of the provocative photo flashed through my mind, and I instinctively pulled away, feeling a wave of nausea. Just say it, what else do you want? I've already emailed my resignation. I can hand everything over tomorrow if needed. Ronald opened his mouth cautiously. Babe, I already bought that wedding dress you liked. It's in the living room. Do you want to try it on? That nickname felt so foreign. Ronald hadn't called me that in nearly a year. I looked up and finally saw the white wedding dress in the middle of the living room. How strange. I'd been so busy packing, I didn't even notice it. I used to love this dress so much. I had it altered again and again at the bridal shop until it was just right. But now, as I looked at it, it felt no different from any other piece of clothing. I suddenly laughed, feeling a sense of release, and shook my head. No need. Some things, when they come too late, you just don't want anymore. Ronald was hurt by the indifference in my eyes. He suddenly sneered. Melissa, don't tell me you've actually fallen for that amnesiac guy in the hospital? I did some digging. He's just an orphan with no parents. Are you really planning to live the same penny-pinching life you did back then with him? I slapped Ronald across the face. He clutched his cheek, disbelief in his eyes. You're hitting me over a stranger? I looked at him coldly. Ronald, have you forgotten? I'm an orphan with no parents too. I was never with you because of your money. At that moment, I was finally certain. I no longer had any feelings for Ronald. As we stood there in silence, a melancholic, lingering melody started playing. Hurting each other until we grow old, refusing to let go despite the pain. I glanced at the phone screen. The caller ID read Gina. I squinted and smiled. Why make Gina wait so long? Go ahead, take the call. Ronald looked at me, wanting to explain, but then hesitated as the phone kept ringing. After a brief pause, he finally answered. Gina's sharp, tearful voice immediately burst through. Ronald, I feel so awful. My heart aches. Can you come and be with me? I've been so unhappy all these years abroad. Ronald panicked at once. Gina, where are you? I'll come right now. He hung up and looked at me pleadingly. Melissa, something happened to her. Can we talk about us when I get back? I almost laughed out loud. I grabbed my suitcase, stood up, and said to Ronald, who was trying to stop me. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Let's part ways peacefully. Isn't Gina the one you've loved and longed for all these years? I'm letting go now. You should be happy. Ronald froze in place. I closed the door behind me and left the place I had lived for 5 years. Sitting in the taxi, I felt surprisingly calm. When Tyrone called to ask when I'd be home for dinner, I even had the energy to joke around with him. There was no anger, and I didn't feel sad. Perhaps, in those countless arguments with Ronald, I had already worn down all the feelings I once had for him. Everything I clung to afterward was just out of habit. And now, it was like breaking a bad habit. All I had to do was stay away, not look, and not think about it. After some time, you realize. There's nothing you can't break free from or forget. It's true for habits, and it's true for people too. When I returned to the hospital after settling my things, the food Tyrone had ordered had already gone cold. The dimly lit double room felt lonely. He hadn't turned on the lights, just sitting there, staring blankly at the food. At that moment, I saw a bit of loneliness in Tyrone, usually always smiling. Thinking of Ronald's words, a sense of shared sadness welled up inside me. I knocked on the door. Why didn't you start eating? He visibly relaxed when he saw me and put on his usual smile. Didn't we agree to eat together? I have to keep my promises. While we ate, Tyrone casually asked. So, did that jerk give you a hard time when you went back? I raised an eyebrow, finally meeting his eyes. You seem very concerned about me? Haven't we met somewhere before? Don't lie to me. The doctor said your head's fine now. Tyrone paused for a moment, then suddenly lifted his shirt, revealing his solid abs and the shocking scar on his waist. I have a small one on my back too. It was from when the orphanage caught fire, and we escaped. Tyrone smiled at me. Do you remember me now? You're that little boy? When I was 10, a chubby boy wandered into our orphanage. He was clueless and didn't fit in with the other kids who were used to seeking attention. No one liked him, but I was the only one who played with him. Then the orphanage caught fire, and I was trapped inside. That chubby boy rushed in and dragged me out. While escaping, a burning wooden plank fell on him, leaving a scar that would never fully heal. I held his chubby little hand on the hospital bed, my eyes filled with tears. I don't even know how to repay you. He looked at me seriously and said, marry me, and that will be enough. Without thinking, I refused. No way, you're not good looking. Pick another wish. He cried loudly, upset. The next day, when I wanted to apologize, the orphanage director told me his family had taken him home. I never saw him again. I studied Tyrone's handsome face carefully, trying to find traces of the chubby boy in my memory. But I gave up quickly. You've changed a lot, I said awkwardly. Tyrone smiled, thanks for the compliment. He looked at me, eyes full of light. So, when are you going to repay the life-saving favor from back then? I was silent for a moment. I'm sorry. Even though I now knew Tyrone was that childhood friend, I still found it hard to believe the words he was saying right now. A few years ago, I might have believed in those romantic reunion stories. But now, I couldn't shake the feeling that Tyrone was just intrigued. Like Ronald. Tyrone gently took my hand and whispered. It's okay, I'll give you time. I've been abroad for years and I'm not very familiar with this city. Once my leg heals, will you show me around? He looked at me pleadingly. To be honest, it was hard to say no to those puppy dog eyes. It was like one of those stray dogs I'd come across in the neighborhood. If you fed it patiently, it would roll over and show you its belly in gratitude. I could only nod, all right. Tyrone's smile grew even brighter. If he had a tail, it would probably be wagging like crazy. In the days that followed, I patiently accompanied him through his rehabilitation. I watched as he gradually stood up from the wheelchair and took shaky steps. One time, he accidentally fell, beads of sweat rolling down his forehead as he groaned in pain. I helped him back into the chair. Tyrone reassured me, "It's nothing, I just slipped." Looking at him like this, a wave of guilt washed over me. "I'm sorry, Tyrone. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't be like this." I'm not stupid. Even though Tyrone hadn't said it. What were the odds that we'd reunite and both get into car accidents at the same time? That day, he was most likely following me down the mountain. Tyrone winced and awkwardly looked at my tears. "Don't cry. It's not your fault. I was just worried and wanted to follow you." The more he tried to comfort me, the worse I felt. "Tyrone, I'm not worth it." In the end, he had no choice but to lean closer. He gently cupped my face, his warm lips stopping my sobs. He kissed away my tears and sighed softly. "Melissa, to me, it's all worth it." Tyrone and I had a silent agreement never to bring up what happened that night again. I continued to accompany him through his rehab, help with his medical bills, and care about his condition. The only difference was, I hired a professional caregiver to avoid being alone with him. Tyrone didn't seem to mind. No matter when I went to visit, he'd always greet me with the brightest smile. If it wasn't for his butler finding me, I probably would have left the city after his leg fully healed, forgetting everything in the past and starting a new life. I admit, I did fall for Tyrone. But once bitten, twice shy, I wasn't going to gamble on someone's sincerity again. In the hospital garden, Tyrone's butler handed me a thick stack of documents. Inside were records of all the financial aid I'd received from middle school to university, along with the thank you letters I had written to my anonymous benefactor over the years. I stared at the documents in shock. So all these years, it was Tyrone who supported me? The butler nodded and explained, "Mr. Tyrone didn't allow me to contact you privately. But, seeing how hard life has been for you, I couldn't bear it, so I came to see you on my own accord." The butler looked at me seriously, his eyes filled with sincerity. "I've heard about your situation. I understand your concerns. But Mr. Tyrone's feelings for you aren't just on a whim. After he was found and brought back, his parents had already passed away, and his relatives had taken over the family's assets. He endured for over 10 years, and only half a year ago did he manage to take back his parents' company. Once the company stabilized, he learned about you and rushed back to see you. But, well, things turned out like this." The butler sighed, "Miss Melissa, I'm not telling you this to pressure you. I just want you to see Mr. Tyrone's sincerity. He's been silently watching over you all these years." After the butler left, I sat alone in the garden for a long time. The evening breeze finally brought me back to reality. I let out a deep breath, stood up, and walked upstairs, gently pushing open Tyrone's hospital room door. "Get out. I told you I don't need a caregiver." Tyrone was struggling to stand up from his wheelchair, using both hands. It wasn't until I approached to help him that he realized it was me. Tyrone froze. "Sorry you had to see that." I shook my head, holding back my tears. "No, the fact that you can stand already is impressive." I helped him back onto the bed and quietly asked, "Why didn't you tell me that it was you who's been supporting me all these years?" Tyrone was taken aback and gave a bitter smile. "You found out, huh? I didn't want you to be with me out of pity or gratitude. I just want you to be happy, Melissa. I did all of that willingly. I don't need anything in return. It's just like how, back then, at the orphanage, even though there were so many kids, you still walked straight towards me. That's all." I moved forward and hugged him tightly. "I'm sorry, Tyrone." He instinctively hugged me back, still mumbling about not needing anything in return. I kissed him, cutting off his words. "I'm so sorry, Tyrone. It wasn't until today that I realized, while I was chasing after someone else, you were always right behind me." When the kiss ended, I opened my dazed eyes and found that Tyrone's face had turned completely red, to the point that he looked like he was about to bleed, and he didn't even know where to place his hands. Even so, he still politely averted his eyes. You, this, us. Suddenly, his face darkened as he seemed to realize something. Are you planning to leave? Like last time? Hiring a caregiver and then never coming to see me again? I looked at him seriously and shook my head gently. I'm not leaving. I still haven't repaid a certain fool for saving my life. How could I just leave? Tyrone froze, and a spark of light flickered in his once dim eyes. I was just about to tease him for being so easily moved when he grabbed me and pulled me into his arms. Careful. Your leg. It was a fierce, deep, unforgettable kiss. By the time I groggily pushed him away, Tyrone gently kissed my forehead. Melissa, you've taken all 3 of my first kisses. You have to take responsibility. I didn't bother correcting his error, just smiled and nodded. Maybe it was because his mood had improved, but Tyrone's rehabilitation progressed astonishingly well. In just half a month, he was already able to walk normally, with only a slight limp, almost indistinguishable from an ordinary person. I belatedly realized and squinted at him suspiciously. Were you playing the wounded hero card on me before? Tyrone looked aggrieved and hugged me. Of course not. It really hurt. But when I see our Melissa, I just feel motivated. I called him a sweet talker, and he responded by clinging to me affectionately. After we officially got together, Tyrone was no longer the shy boy who blushed at every touch. I rubbed my sore jaw, cursing myself for letting the wolf into my home. As autumn arrived, Tyrone's leg finally healed completely. I kept my promise and took him around the city I had lived in my whole life. Our first stop was the orphanage where we first met. The old director hadn't left after retiring but stayed on to continue helping out. When she saw me, she was delighted. Melissa, the clothes and blankets you donated last time were a big hit with the kids. I smiled, that's the least I could do. The director glanced at Tyrone behind me and whispered, Is that your boyfriend? Ronald was always too busy, he hadn't visited even once in all these years. I didn't blame the director for getting it wrong. Following her gaze, I saw Tyrone avoiding eye contact, but his ears were obviously perked up. I couldn't help but laugh. He's not that one, but yes, he is my boyfriend. Tyrone's mood visibly lifted. He came over and playfully pinched my waist, then strolled around the orphanage, acting like he owned the place. I squinted at him, feeling a bit jealous of his smugness. So, with a mischievous grin, I turned to the director. Director, does he look familiar to you? The director adjusted her slipping reading glasses and waved Tyrone over. Tyrone, gritting his teeth, stiffly walked over, his movements awkward. The director studied him for a moment and hesitantly said, Aren't you the chubby boy who used to cry every time he saw a cockroach? Tyrone begrudgingly nodded. The director patted him on the shoulder, looking pleased. Good, you've really changed. I laughed so hard I doubled over. That night, I paid the price for my teasing when Tyrone, with a dark expression, pinned me to the bed. Tears welled up in my eyes from the sheer intensity of it. He kept asking over and over. Melissa, was it really that funny? Was it really that funny? Running into Ronald again was purely by accident. I used to think that erasing him from my memory would be a long and painful process. But after being with Tyrone for just 2 or 3 days, I had forgotten him completely. So much so that I didn't even recognize him at first. Tyrone and I had gone to pick up our custom-made wedding rings. Tyrone insisted on making me wear the ring as we strolled around the mall. At every store we visited, he would casually drop. What? How did you know my girlfriend and I are getting married? At first, the staff would react with confusion. What? But they would quickly switch to professional, enthusiastic smiles. Congratulations, sir. We have a few items that would be perfect for you too. That's when Ronald showed up, with Gina, who now had a small baby bump, trailing behind him. He froze when he saw me. Then his eyes swept over the rings on mine and Tyrone's hands, and his face darkened. Ignoring Gina's calls from behind, he stormed over and grabbed my arm tightly. His eyes were bloodshot, and his voice trembled slightly. Melissa. How dare you? Tyrone was still basking in the compliments from the store clerks, and Ronald and Gina had approached from such an angle that he hadn't noticed I was being confronted. After a brief moment of surprise, I laughed, lifted my chin, and pointed in Gina's direction. "Ronald, your first love is still right there, isn't she? So, what's the deal with you pulling me over like this?" Ronald froze, his face flushing red and pale, stammering, "Melissa, it's not what you think." But I was tired of it. I pried his fingers off one by one, glanced down at his lower half with disgust, and sneered. "Get lost. Rotten cucumber." At this point, the truth didn't matter anymore, I didn't care. But if Tyrone saw Ronald, there'd be no escaping his jealousy. I'd have to kiss my waist goodbye. Just then, Gina came rushing over, glaring at me with venom. I smiled as I pushed Ronald's hand into hers and said, "Keep an eye on your rotten cucumber. Don't let him mess around outside again, or you might catch something. Now that you've got a kid, stop causing trouble. Just behave." I didn't even bother to see their reactions. I quickly ran over to Tyrone, saying, "Come on, let's go. We've bought enough from this store. Time to hit the next one." What I didn't expect was for Ronald and Gina to be so persistent. They actually followed us into the next shop. I couldn't help but twitch the corner of my mouth. Great. There was no avoiding it now. Sure enough, the second Tyrone spotted them, he wrapped his arm around my waist. Gina rolled her eyes and sneered at Tyrone. "A kept man, huh? And you're still so possessive." Tyrone looked at me in disbelief. His eyes asked, "Me? A kept man?" I gave him an innocent look, I had no clue either. Gina strutted into the store, raising her chin arrogantly at the staff. "We'll take this one, and that one, all of them." She picked every single outfit I had just selected, her intention clear as day. Then, with a mocking glance at me, she added pointedly, "Some people really should stop pretending they have money. Clothes from the slums would suit you better." I bit my lips, trying to hold back my laughter. But to Gina, my expression must have looked like embarrassment. Feeling even more triumphant, she smirked. "Melissa, if you bend down and help me put on my shoes, I'll pay for these clothes for you. How about that?" Tyrone was about to step in, but I tugged his arm and shook my head slightly. The next second, the sales associate turned to Gina with an awkward smile. "Sorry, Ms. Gina, these clothes have already been reserved by Ms. Melissa." Gina froze, then laughed in disbelief. "I'll pay extra. Just sell them to me, got it?" The associate lowered her head even further. "Apologies, Mr. Tyrone is a VIP at our store. He has priority. We have other lovely items if you'd like to take a look." At that, Gina stared at me in shock, nearly grinding her teeth to dust. Even Ronald's face darkened. Tyrone pulled me closer, waving his black card smugly. "Sorry, you too." He took the shopping bags from the associate, and with me in tow, we sauntered out of the store. Once we were back in the car, Tyrone and I exchanged a look and burst into laughter. After that, I never saw Ronald and Gina again. Years later, I heard they had a dramatic divorce, and the child wasn't even Ronald's. That turned Ronald into a running joke among our old friends. But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. Our wedding, Tyrone and I, wasn't grand, we didn't have that many close friends to invite. During the vows, Tyrone almost cried as he held my hand. In the blessings of the old director and the butler, we promised to be each other's forever. Ronald's story. After Melissa completely left him, Ronald realized that aside from the number that had long been blocked, he had no other way to reach her. He didn't even know which orphanage Melissa had grown up in. Melissa had mentioned several times that she wanted to take him back to visit. And what had he said back then? Busy with work, no time. After being rejected so many times, Melissa never brought it up again. If he had the chance, Ronald would want to tell her that even though Gina came back, he wouldn't have abandoned her. But being good to Gina had long become instinct, ingrained in his very being. Those years of indulgence and tolerance from their youth, those habits were hard to change even as adults. But deep down, Ronald knew, it wasn't love. When his friends teased him for being henpecked, he lashed out at Melissa. He thought it was normal for a man to save face in public. But he didn't expect that this need for face would make him lose Melissa forever. The morning he woke up hungover. Finding Gina lying next to him, his mind went blank. Facing Gina's shy and coy expression, he felt no joy, no happiness. There was only one thought in his mind: he and Melissa were over. He and Gina rushed into marriage because of the baby. But their married life was far from happy. Gina was spoiled and willful, and all the flaws that hadn't been obvious when they were just friends now showed up in full force, wearing Ronald down. But for the sake of the child, Ronald endured. He came home later and less frequently. He thought this was just how his life would be. Until their son turned 5 and was in a car accident, losing a lot of blood. Panicked, Ronald was told by the doctor that their blood types didn't match. The child wasn't his. At that moment, he almost laughed out loud. So, it turns out that all these years, he had been nothing more than a joke. From then on, in the quiet of countless nights, Ronald would think of Melissa. He wanted to apologize, to beg for forgiveness. For just one chance to start over. But Ronald knew deep down, it was too late. On this road of life, he and Melissa would never cross paths again. The end.